What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is your latest YouTube video. I know you all wanted this, so here it is. It is your maximalist's optimal arm training guide, right? I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about training each part of your arm and shoulder the best you can. Now let's go ahead into the video. To restate everything you already need to be doing to be developing your muscles the best: high frequency, high intensity, low volume, or maximum tolerable or recoverable volume, especially and at least for that muscle that we want to maximize growth in, right? We want to have a lot of time to rest. We want to be putting it first in the session and do it unilaterally, so we get more motor unit recruitment, therefore more gains. So let's start with biceps, right? We all love big biceps. Send me a bicep pic. Anyway, how do we go about training biceps? They have two functions. They supinate the wrist when it is in a flexed elbow position, and they also flex the elbow. So that's what we want to be training. For the elbow flexion challenge, just a descending resistance profile preacher curl will be best, okay? If you don't have an entirely descending resistance profile preacher curl, where it is hardest at the bottom and then gets easier, for example, if you're doing it with dumbbells on a bench, on an incline bench, right, it isn't that hard about here and it gets harder about here. You can just simply cut out this part of the range of motion, right? Start at the top, position yourself, and then just go like this. Stop at about there. The biceps still have great leverage there. And below that, there isn't much resistance, so it's your other elbow flexors. And then just come right back up, and then go about until there, to the point of peak resistance, which is undoubtedly where your biceps still will have good leverage, and just come back up and do it like that. Now, for the wrist supination challenge, you want to have a flexed elbow, as I already said, and you can do it a variety of ways. You can do Newton supinations, or you can just do it braced against the bench. That's biceps training really simplified. Then let's go on to a few of your forearm muscles, right? Your brachioradialis and your pronator muscle. For your pronator muscle, you can simply do pronations. I will put up a video of how I do pronations. It's not a video of me, but it's just how I do them. I just don't record my pronations, and that is a very valid way to do pronation work, right? For that little pronator muscle that a lot of wrestlers have very well developed, like Devin Larratt. Maybe a picture there. Okay, now for your brachioradialis, what it does is it flexes the elbow, but when your hand is in a neutral position. For this, you want to be doing what Keenan R. Malloy does. I learned this from him. Maybe he learned it from someone else. And I am going to be mentioning his name a couple times this video, because he is honestly might be the GOAT of science-based lifting on TikTok, right? But whatever. You want to be getting a cable stack, a cuff, grabbing the cuff like, it's not a cuff, but like that, right? And then making the cable height so that the range of motion starts when you're already like this, at about a 90-degree angle here. So that you're only doing like this. That's really it. That's the best you can get for your brachioradialis. It's better than hammer curls because you're moving the redundant part of the range of motion, etc. Okay, that was it. I'm kidding, that was not it for forearms. There's a lot more stuff you can do to maximize it, and I have to talk about it since it is part of your arm, your entire arm, okay? This is very fun. You can do a lot of stuff, right? Your thumb doesn't really matter when it comes to forearm training, because I don't think there are many muscles or any that move your thumb in the forearm itself. If not in the hand, they are. So let's just ignore that. Let's talk about finger extension, right? To work the extensors, right? And just doing that. I'm not sure exactly what that motion is called right now. I'm blanking, but going from outside in to work these muscles right here, And basically that, right? We want to be doing that. We might also want to be doing some wrist curls and wrist curls, reverse wrist curls for your other extensor and wrist curling muscles. Sorry, I blanked there. Okay, this might be an unenjoyable video. I'm not editing any of this. All right, this is being unedited. This is just being put onto YouTube. Sorry for talking too much and for the awkward pauses. Anyways, moving on to the favorite part, I love to talk about this tricep training. 3 heads of the tricep: medial, lateral, and the most important one, some may say, the long head. It's the biggest part of your tricep and the one that shows and hangs onto your bicep most when you're doing a front double bi or anything like that. So let's talk about it first. It has 2 functions: into shoulder extension and high degrees of shoulder elevation, so like this. Remember, this is shoulder extension, moving it backwards, and this is shoulder flexion, moving it up. Now, it does that, and it also does some elbow extension, right? So let's go with elbow extension first. You want to be doing easily, you guessed it, a shoulder extension challenge. I'm kidding. Yikes, I'm not editing this. Sorry. You want to be doing an elbow extension challenge with arms by side, aka in anatomical position, because that is where the long head has best leverage to extend the elbow, right? You can do this a variety of ways. You can do quarter extensions, modified quarter extensions. You can just do regular single arm, extensions. You can do them how Keenan does them. A lot of ways. Best one is one with very, very high amounts of stability, so that you get more motor unit recruitments. There is less stability demand to the brain, so more motor unit recruitment. Anyways, there's that. Now for the shoulder extension challenge, you simply want to be doing shoulder extension overhead until about there, where it is hardest at the top and gets easier as you come down here, because there, that's a better leverage to do shoulder extension. Also, note, this will also work some of your lower pec, but it's a trade-off that we have to take. I don't really know of, and I don't think anyone knows of, another way to train the long head of the triceps proximally through shoulder extension better than this, okay? That doesn't hit your lower pec. Anyway, moving on to the medial and lateral head, you need to be hitting this if you want to develop your entire tricep, all right? But you want to be doing some overhead extensions. I'm sorry, I'm a bit sick. Anyway, a lot of people say you should be doing JM presses, but you really shouldn't, because there are compound movements and there is less motor unit recruitment and there is more CNS fatigue because they are compound movements, which means less motor unit recruitment and more CNS fatigue, which will greatly impact your subsequent session and your recovery afterwards. So, knowing your long head has bad leverage to do shoulder extension overhead, it is going to be purely medial and lateral head, so just do overhead extensions. Now for the deltoids, right? To get that start delt, you need to be doing all 3 of these things. Well, there are more than 3, but you need to be hitting all 3 of the deltoid regions, right? There are 7 sub-regions technically, like 2 here, 3 there, and then 2 back there, but you get the gist of it, all right? I'm just talking too much. Again, sorry. If I sound weird, I am sick. Wish me to get better in the comments, please. I want the engagement. Anyways, for the shoulders, front delts, right? Let's start with that. You can do low raises overhead, starting at about there. That sucks, right? That's useless. We don't want that. Starting there and just coming up over here. That's going to be a little bit of side delts for the same reasons a frontal plane press is, but you don't have to do those, there's another alternative for your front delts. Anyway, I do them. They're fun. Try them out if you want to have fun. But you can also do some shoulder flexion, like so. Coming from over here, and just do it like that. That's it, quite literally, boom. Front delt figured out. Now, I want to make a little side note, right? Your side delts and front delts are involved in a frontal plane shoulder press. And in the shoulder press like this, right, with your arms closer by your side, you're going to have more upper pec involvements. That is why we don't want to be doing either of those. Also, there's of course triceps because of this press. We don't want to be doing either of those for the deltoids because that is not optimal. That is what I'm talking about in this video. The best train every single muscle. Now, you might say, well, you said do whatever you want for the unilateral arms by side elbow extension challenge. I'm not going into the super nuances of it. You can go to my TikTok for that, or maybe I'll make another video about the super nuances of it. But yeah, I'm just telling you the basic outline, bro. Chill out. If you really cared about it, you'd be going into my TikTok or Keenan R. Malloy's TikTok. Shameless plug. He isn't even paying me. What am I saying? Anyway, side delt, right? Sorry. Side delts do shoulder abduction. Also, I want to make an important note. External rotation, right? That means whether it's like that, that's externally rotated, that is internally rotated. Whether your shoulder is internally rotated or externally rotated will, of course, determine what heads of the delts you're using. For example, if I'm doing a raise over here, right? Ignore my hand. And I have an internally rotated shoulder, it will be more side delts than if I had it externally rotated and we're doing it like this. That's just simple facts. Likewise, if I were doing it out to the side and I had it internally rotated, it will be more side and a bit more of that near to the rear. Oh yeah, that's a rhyme, side delt. Then if I were doing it externally rotated, even out to the side, which would be a bit more front delt development. So we should take that into account and adjust accordingly. Remember, just because it's a lateral raise doesn't mean you're targeting your side delt best, especially if you are overly externally or internally rotated, right? It should be about neutral, really, or a bit internally rotated, but you know, not too much to where it becomes a bit more rear delts. Now, oh my God, I just talked about that and didn't even talk about what you should do. Sorry. You should be doing some simple shoulder abduction challenge with, you know, what I already mentioned, internal rotation a little bit. I personally grab a cuff, put it near my elbow because, you know, the shear forces and everything. Oh, by the way, cuff near elbow for also the front delt stuff, right? There's less shear forces. You're taking out a useless part of your body that's just going to be bad for motor unit recruitment, right? Because you're like using your hand and wrist. Oh no, you don't want that. So just cuff at the elbow or near the elbow, so just shear forces at the elbow, get even more motor unit recruitment, right? So let's torque more motor unit recruitment. That's more low. Anyway, I do them like that. From down there, kneeling, by the way, for increased stability and more motor unit recruitment. And just like that, you can do them from out to the front. You can do them seated on a bench facing that way. The cable's here, you're facing sideways, and just do them like that. Standing, supported against, or wherever you go away from. Any way, again, no nuances, just the basic outline. That is side delt training done, most optimal. Now for the rear delts, we're almost done. Thank you for watching this basically 15-minute, 16, 17 maybe minute video. I don't know how long it is, I haven't finished. But so far it's 14:43. Anyway, for the rear delt shoulder extension, we love that word around here, don't we? We can do that like that, or we can do it horizontally, transverse, in the transverse plane, like in a reverse back take. You can do either. By the way, you can train your rear delts during a row because you're, of course, doing shoulder extension. It's not just scapular retraction. Now, should you? No, because that means less upper back gains. If your upper back is really developed and it isn't really a concern for you to get a bit less upper back for, some conveniency. Conveniency. This is science-based lifting. Anyway, for some conveniency and hitting your delts, so just do rows instead of calzones, which I recommend for the upper back anyway. Doing calzones, I mean. Anyways, just do shoulder extension, man. That or transverse plane. I'm not gonna talk about it too much. I talk about it a lot of stuff enough already. Video is too damn long. I'm not gonna edit anything. So sorry for making you watch all of this uncut. It's a horrible video. Probably will get no engagements. I'm gonna feel bad about that, but it's not gonna matter in the grand scheme of my life or anyone else's life. Wow. Man, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe if you did. Go check out my TikTok, link in bio. Next video is a back training, most optimal way to guide.